What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, two division, former world champion, former junior welterweight unified world champion, former WBC welterweight world champion, Danny Swift Garcia, doubles down on his comments and his message that him and his dad, Angel Garcia, his father, trainer Angel Garcia, had for undefeated unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer Earl the True Spence Jr. Danny Garcia had this to say. He says, I know a lot of people are feeling like this is the right time for me to face Errol Spence Jr. He says, because he's coming off of a tough fight September 28th with two-time welterweight world champion Showtime Sean Porter, in which Errol Spence took the WBC title away from Showtime Sean Porter. So he's saying, I know a lot of people feel like he was in that tough fight, and then October 10th, just 12 days later, he suffered a horrific car accident. So the time is right for me to beat Errol Spence, if the time was never right. He says, but that's not the case. He says, the time was always right for me to beat Errol Spence Jr. before he suffered that horrific car accident, before he had that tough fight with Showtime Sean Porter. I'm the real WBC champ. He thought, clearly, Danny Garcia thought he won the fight against Showtime Sean Porter. He fought Showtime Sean Porter for the vacant WBC title that he lost to unified unified WBA and WBC welterweight world champion Keith one-time Thurman, who took the WBC title from Danny Swift Garcia. So Danny Garcia is saying that he took a break. He says, I was campaigning and reigning as the world champion in two different weight classes, junior welterweight and welterweight, for 7 years. I took a break. He says, and they captured the title. Now it's time for me to regain the title. But with that said, I've always been better skilled and more power, and always been better skilled and had more power than Errol Spence Jr. I've always would have beat him before the car accident. The car accident just gives people a reasoning to highlight and feel like I have an advantage. He says, but before the car accident, I was better skilled and had more power than Errol Spence Jr. and would have beat Errol Spence Jr. at any point before the car accident. Now, I have this to say. Obviously, Errol Spence Jr. at one point in time was campaigning and, calling out Danny Garcia, calling out Keith Thurman, calling out Sean Porter. He called out the best of the best at the welterweight division, right? He just recently, he called out Manny Pacquiao, 8-division world champion, Filipino superstar, iconic boxer, and currently the WBA welterweight world champion after he removed that from Keith Thurman, right? So he called out Errol Spence, called out Danny Garcia for quite some time, right? But everybody felt like they had other business and bigger fights at that point in time. Danny Garcia is never short on confidence. His father, Angel Garcia, is never short on confidence. So I'm not surprised that they feel like they would have beaten Errol Spence before the car accident. And it's not like publicly they're ever going to say they don't know if they could beat Errol Spence. Only one boxer I heard in the history of the sport of boxing, at least in my time in watching the sport of boxing, is when I heard Billy Joe Saunders, 2-division world champion, British superstar, super middleweight boxer, say that he thought that Gennady Triple G Golovkin, former unified middleweight world champion, would beat him and other fighters on the same night. That's what Billy Joe Saunders had to say. So he's the only boxer I heard in my time of watching the sport of boxing that said that he feel like another boxer would not only beat him, but could beat him and another opponent on this very same night. This is what Billy Joe Saunders had to say. So with that said, I'm not surprised to think that Danny Garcia is going to say he would have never been able to beat Errol Spence, and this is the perfect time because Errol Spence had a setback with the car accident, right? So you can't expect Danny Garcia to say anything less than he would have beaten Errol Spence at any point in time, at any given time in his career. That's not surprising, right? What is surprising is that he highlighted the reasons why he would have beat Errol Spence. He feels like he's just more skilled than Errol Spence. He feels like he just has more power than Errol Spence. Now, he does pack punch in both hands. He does pack power in both hands. Errol Spence is more of an accumulation of puncher. He breaks you down in levels and ultimately stops you, a la Kell Brook, right? Now, he didn't stop Sean Porter, but he did drop Sean Porter in the 11th round of their fight. And if he didn't go back into his shell, into his defense, if he would have let a combination go, he may have knocked Sean Porter out, right? But with that said, you know, I don't mind saying that Danny Garcia has more power than Errol Spence. I think Danny Garcia may have more one-punch knockout power than Errol Spence. But as far as being more skilled than Errol Spence, I don't believe that he's more skilled than Errol Spence. I think that he's more patient than Errol Spence. I think he's flat-footed and a counter-puncher more so than Errol Spence. Errol Spence is the aggressor. Danny Garcia is a counter-puncher. But Errol Spence changes levels. Errol Spence can fight on the inside. Errol Spence can fight on the outside. We've seen Danny Garcia struggle with his opponents fighting him on the outside because he doesn't have the natural athletic ability to keep up with guys that fight on the outside and utilize the ring, a la Keith Thurman and Sean Porter, right? So they're better athletes, in which that turns into them being their skill set showing up better when you face Danny Garcia, because Danny Garcia, he kind of follows you around at that point in time. He was following Keith Thurman around. They slowed down in the second half of the fight, and so that made the fight closer. But if you watch the first half of the fight with Sean Porter and Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia, they clearly were winning the early rounds, utilizing their legs and utilizing the ring space, right? So when he says he's more skilled than Errol Spence, I have to disagree with him on that point. Now, when he says that he has more power, I don't mind giving him the nod, the edge, and power. But when he says he's more skilled, that's where I have to, disagree with Danny Garcia, because I feel like Errol Spence is more skilled. Errol Spence has more tools in the toolbox. Errol Spence can make better adjustments. You never see Danny Garcia make many adjustments in his fight, if any at all. Danny Garcia is pretty much what you see is what you get from Danny Garcia. But now that's a very difficult Danny Garcia to beat, because he is a counterpuncher and he does pack power in both hands. And he does have skill set. I just don't think he's more skilled than Errol Spence Jr. Does he have a skill set? Yes, he has a beautiful jab. He throws beautiful combinations, but he's not the fastest guy in the world. His punches don't get there to the target as quick as Errol Spence's. So Errol Spence is going to nullify his power, because he too has power, but he's more skilled on the inside. Then if Errol Spence so chooses, he could choose to take the fight to the outside. And, like he did Mikey Garcia, he just outclassed and outboxed Mikey Garcia for 12 rounds. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people want to say that Errol Spence's size difference proved to be the difference in the fight, but his size had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with his boxing IQ, his boxing skill set, and, his ability to make adjustments. And that's what he did. He boxed Mikey Garcia from the outside. He used the ring. He utilized distance. He utilized his jab, his straight right, and just broke Mikey Garcia down. And I believe that if Errol Spence truly wanted to step on the gas, he could have stopped Mikey Garcia, right? He did say if he was in better shape, if he took the sport more serious and, and been more disciplined, he could have been able to step on the gas to stop Mikey Garcia. And I have no doubt that he could have done that, right? But he did show you that he could fight on the inside with Sean Porter. He did show you he could cut the ring off against a boxer like Chris Algieri, who utilized the ring. That's his strength. He did show you that, he can mix it up with a guy like Lamont Peterson. He did show you he can be the pressure fighter against Kell Brook in hostile environment in the UK, and just absolutely broke Kell Brook down physically, body, just changing levels, up, down, right? So, he showed these abilities to have different styles and, make adjustments and, utilize the ring if so necessary. He just showed you that he's more versatile than Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia is a power puncher. His biggest punch is his left hook. A lot of people used to, say that Danny Garcia closed his eyes on the left hook. He didn't even look at the target. He just threw it, right? Recklessly, and it landed. No, I think that Danny Garcia does have great timing. I do think that Danny Garcia has a great counterpunch ability, and I do think that Danny Garcia does have a skill set. He has a great jab as well. It's just that in the athletic department, he comes up short against most of the upper echelons in the welterweight division. Most of his peers, in and around his division, because they're just more athletic. Their hand speed, their foot speed shows up in the ring when they're in the ring with Danny Garcia. Like I stated, Keith Thurman and Sean Porter. And I think the same will be said for Errol Spence Jr. I think that people are shortchanging Errol Spence Jr. when it comes to his athletic ability and his quickness and his hand speed and things of that nature, because he seems to be so technical and so disciplined in the ring that it just doesn't jump off at you at the screen, right? He's just not throwing reckless combinations with just putting tons of hand speed on it. He's not just utilizing the ring for no reason, unnecessary movement. He uses calculated movement and calculated combinations and calculated jab, so it doesn't jump off doesn't jump off out at you off the screen, right? But it's there. The ability is there. And I think with him being more disciplined, him being more focused, and suffering that horrific car accident, as he stated, he is now, rededicated himself to the sport of boxing. He's more focused, and he's counting his blessings for what he could have lost, right? And what the sport of boxing provided him. So he's back, in love with the sport of boxing, dare I say, and he's focused. So I think he will have the stamina in the second half of the fight to utilize the ring if he so needed to utilize his legs. But I think that's going to be a hard-fought fight. I think it's going to look a lot like the Kell Brook fight. The difference is between Kell Brook and Danny Garcia is that Danny Garcia leaves himself far more open at times than Kell Brook does. Kell Brook has a tighter defense, right? And Kell Brook, I believe, is stronger than Danny Garcia with a better jab. He's not as, fluid as Danny Garcia is a counterpuncher, but Kell Brook is a big, strong, strapping welterweight who's very disciplined on defense and has a tight guard, right? And so it took Errol Spence a little bit longer to be able to break Kell Brook down than I think is going to be with Danny Garcia. I think Danny Garcia is enough of a veteran, enough of a threat in the ring that he'll get to the 12th round, right? He'll get to the last bell, but it's going to be a hard-fought fight, and I believe that Errol Spence will separate himself. You'll clearly know who the win is. I think it will be 8 rounds to 4 for Errol Spence, but it's going to be a fantastic fight. But when it comes to skill department, I believe that Errol Spence is definitely better in the skill department, and I do think Danny Garcia has the edge in power. But I can't wait to see how this all plays out November 21st. So drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed? Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.